So thank you, Dr. Savanthi. We give this time to Davis to speak for a few minutes, a briefing about this event, and then Mr. Magalwadi is going to speak to us.
Thank you, Dr. Nelson Garu, for this time. Yes, my name is Jabez. I'm the founder president for the reasons behind. The first word that I want to say, most of you, any inconvenience, I know you have felt inconvenience of many things going on here, starting at time and all that. Please forgive us for all of those things, and please cooperate with us. Everything will be on time from now onwards. The lunch will be on time. And this time, I would like to just briefly share about why this event actually is planned. Many of you, I think over the years, have known Dr. Vishal and his writings and the impact that the books have made and his lectures have made across the world. And when we got in touch with Dr. Vishal in the month of June, there were few leaders that we have met, and the opinion of the many leaders were, let's have a closed meeting with probably 200 to 300, only the intellectuals, the top intellectuals gather together, probably in a hotel kind of a setup. But having heard Dr. Vishal and his lectures, myself actually drove the point to the Harihara Bhavan. I'll also explain why we have taken this particular place to be the meeting place or the venue for the conference. As we have watched the situation in the country, politically, also from the church perspective, and also from the intellectuals perspective, plus the youth, the students from the universities, when you look around from all these different angles in a country, especially a country like India, which has a 50% population being young people, I said having Dr. Vishal speak to 200 people will not solve the problem. Do you all agree with me? Are you all with me on this? Right? See, there have been several meetings, I believe, over the years. Many intellectuals probably had many meetings, different parts of the world, but confining them to a small place like a hotel, I said, what is the population of our country and what is the need that is there in the country, and to create the hunger also from the, to stimulate the intellectual thinking part of it in the church. I said this meeting has to be in a public place. Amen? So the initial plan was to see this meeting take place in Gachibowli, in a bigger stadium with 5,000 intellectuals gathering together, because we were continuously feeling that there has to be more intellectuals for the country. There has to be bigger number of thinkers, the think tank of people from different walks of life come together so that a bigger group can address the bigger problems of the country. So that was the purpose of having this meeting in this place. I know many things may have gone wrong, and also the title that we have selected, many have suggested, let's go as Christian Intellectual Summit, or some other name that that really gets only the intellectuals to be participating in the summit. But we said any born-again believer who can speak and understand English should be part of this event, I said. Because I believe everybody that has the Spirit of God in them, I believe that God's Spirit also provides wisdom for every born-again believer. So we said, let even a nurse, if she can understand English and speak English, let her be the part of the event so that she'll start developing that hunger for these kind of topics, and then this will get into the church. So we have noticed the church one side living in a different exclusive community, not really connected to the society or the issues that are happening in the society. So we wanted to see the church come out and take up these subjects, take up the books of Dr. Vishal, and then study them and then grow in this knowledge so that they can, in the marketplace, they can be witnesses for the Lord much more powerfully. So that was the vision of this. So we've been talking about, we didn't want to call this as an event. Definitely we are not after an event, but after a movement. So even yesterday we had a gathering with Dr. Vishal. So the whole thing that was discussed was, let this be a starting point of a movement in India so that many more intellectuals in the coming days will rise to impact this nation. How many of you would like to be part of such a movement? And so we made it very clear. We wanted each one of your data to be with us, so we were very strict that you would fill up the registration form so that in the coming days we can get in touch with you and see that you are part of this movement. Maybe these events will start happening in Tamil Nadu for Tamil Christian Intellectual Summit, Malayalam Christian Intellectual Summit. So we're expecting that this will take off to other states so that it rises up that kind of movement across the country so that the actual issues of the Indian community will be addressed intelligently. Right? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, for explaining so many things about this summit, and we need to hear our speaker a lot because it's only one day we have. So we clap and invite him once again.
Thank you. I'm sorry that we didn't have the copy of this new book for each one of you, but you will get the cover today, which has been printed yesterday with little introduction and an order form. This is the first of 3 volumes. It's called "This Book Changed Everything." The Bible's Amazing Impact on Our World. That's the title and the subtitle of the book. This book changed everything. And what would really help is if in Andhra and Telangana, study groups emerged to read the book, and we will supply you with discussion questions. So if the small groups met once a week to discuss 3 or 4 chapters that you've read in the previous week, then we would, in June, I hope to finish with volume 2, which will discuss the Bible's impact on arts and architecture, on family, education, healthcare, etc. And then volume 3 we hope to complete by December next year, but publish in 2020. It's called The Bible and Its Critics. Why do philosophers, theologians, scientists, historians, archaeologists, why do they reject the Bible, and how do we answer them? That will be volume 3. So this is first volume, and after this 3-volume study of the Bible's impact on the world is out of my way, then I hope to devote time to writing one book called The Bible, How the Bible Created Modern India, which is very important because whoever controls history controls the future. And if we are not interested in studying history, it is others who will shape the future because they will misrepresent what really has happened in India. So I've written 3 books to Arun Shourie because he was the one who began attacking the Bible in 1994 when the Roman Catholic bishops invited him to speak to them in Pune. He gave a lecture against missions and then went on to publish his book in 94, Missionaries in India, in which he went from attacking the Bible to attacking Jesus and attacking contact mission, Jesus and the Bible. And I began writing letters to him, which is called Missionary Conspiracies, Letters to a Postmodern Hindu. I hope there are some copies for sale at the book table. Then I wrote a second book called, it is Jean Albert Reed's book, Fascism, Modern and Postmodern, in which I wrote a 35-page introduction to Arun Shourie himself. It's called A Gentleman and a Fascist. Now, his current attacks on our Prime Minister, etc., when he's saying the next election may be the very last democratic election in India. If we want to save India, we have to defeat the people who will destroy a democratic India. Because, as I will share half an hour or so, the democracy and Hinduism cannot coexist. One must destroy the other. And that is what Arun Shourie, whom I call fascist and a gentleman, when he was attacking the church and Christianity and Jesus Christ, he is saying that, he's on record, that he said that recently. Now my third book, which I dedicated to him, is this book. Few copies are on sale. The book that made your world. So this was the first study of how the Bible created the modern world, how the Bible created the soul of Western civilization. So I've already written several books on the Bible's impact on India, but I want to spend several months in the library and bring it all together, how the Bible created modern India. The people here in Telugu land, combining Andhra and Telangana, they worship the gentleman who created the dam over Godavari, turned this region of Godavari into the rice basket of India. He was asked to build a bridge over Godavari so that the British armies from Chennai, Madras at that time, would come up north to fight the battles. The British were not interested in dams and irrigation canals, but as he insisted that no, we must build a dam for the people. And he's known, he's loved, but the spiritual dynamics behind what he was doing are not known. And we need Telugu intellectuals to study his life, his biography, and the ideas that why would he seek to transform at that time Andhra Pradesh, or why does Andhra Pradesh, which is now split, existed as a state? I said that India was 560, 70 princely states, or was it 670, I forget how many, at the time of independence. But these states were reorganized along language. So Telugu, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Maharashtra, languages reorganized the state. And then India moved from being a nation which was Mughal Empire and British Empire, became an independent nation. What is the meaning of empire? What's the meaning of nation? Why is the nation reorganized, the states reorganized linguistically? This is all biblical worldview, which we don't understand. That's what God had done in Genesis 11. All the people living in the area called Shinar, Mesopotamia, between Tigris and Euphrates, they were all descendants of Noah in biblical records. So they were one people, one ethnic group. One ethnicity was divided into different language groups. Linguistic distinctions. So they couldn't understand each other. And they traveled. So language was the basis of the nation. That's why this is a Telugu summit. Language was the basis of what became nation, not ethnicity. That's a confusion which Fuller Bible Seminary has created, and the American evangelical movement has exported, that the foundation of a nation is ethnicity, a people group. That's not true. They were all one people group in Genesis 11. Language separated them. But then they didn't know how to be a good nation. So God created nations. Why He created, we might talk about it. But then He called Abraham in chapter 12 of Genesis to make him a great nation. What's a great nation? That's a language which Europeans don't use anymore, but President Trump thankfully started using it, that we want America to be a great nation. And that's true biblical language, because the Bible is talking about turning nations into great nations repeatedly from Genesis 12 to Revelation 22. That in the New Jerusalem there is a river flowing through the middle of the stream, a street, on both sides a tree of life, and the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. In chapter 21 of Revelation you have the New Jerusalem. It has no light because it's a lampstand. A lampstand doesn't give any light until the lamp sits on it. So the Lamb of God will become the lamp of the city of New Jerusalem, and then the kings of the nations will walk in it. So if you're thinking about the whole, whether Bofors or Raphael's, the kings of the nations are not walking in the light of the Lamb of God, who should be the Lamb, how will that light shine? So when we're talking about intellectual submit, of filling the earth with the knowledge of God, we're really talking about filling the earth with the light of God, so that people might know how to live and how to walk. This has already happened in India before. We lost it, and I will explain that in a few minutes. But a new revival, a new reformation needs to begin, and that is what Anil was explaining to us, is that we need to build a movement. Otherwise, this event would not have any lasting value. What could this movement look like? You have to decide, but my suggestion is that if you build it as a group, a network of relationships where people are studying every month. So if you want to be a part of Telugu Christian intellectuals, you have to commit to reading one book a month. Let's begin with this book which you are getting today, the flyers you are getting today. And but then let's choose, you choose, 10, 20 of you, 12 books to be translated into Telugu and published in 2019. So everybody is, the books are selling, we choose carefully, these are the books that should be studied, and you make that decision. Let's set up a for-profit business where professionally the books are translated, proofread, revised, published, distributed, and people are reading and discussing them in small groups. And then perhaps in a year's time we can have a bigger 2-3 day summit where we go into depth, because we've got to understand the big issues facing the church, facing the world, facing the country, and it is no less than someone like Arun Shiv is saying that if we don't take responsibility to change the future, we will be the victims in the future. We will be persecuted. The news reports of lynching and people being stripped and beaten and raped. Don't take them lightly. This is what happened to Germany. This is what has happened to many nations, where no one is safe, no one is secure. How did India become a nation which is ruled by law? That's also hopefully we can talk today, at least in a summary form, but if you're not able to talk, in the new book there is a whole chapter on rule of law. We have two friends in New Delhi, lawyers, who are applying that perspective to the law in India. So when the Supreme Court says that homosexuality is not a crime, adultery is not a crime, it is the biblical law that the Supreme Court is rejecting, because even the European and American nations have rejected the biblical law. What are the consequences of that? So that's the first point right now, to help us grasp the impact that the Bible had on the nation, and now the nation has rejected that heritage. It was in 1850 that Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar first began to argue that if we want to reform India, then a Hindu should have only one wife. 1872, Keshav Chandra Sen, who followed Ram Mohan Roy, and Keshav Chandra Sen is called crypto-Christian, he was virtually a Christian, who really fought that we need a law in India that an Indian can have only one wife. Why was this important to him? It was because in the 1850s and 60s and 70s, Indian intellectuals had understood why a small island such as England can colonize a subcontinent such as India. Just with a few thousand soldiers, they come and they colonize us. What has made us so weak? And the conclusion of these Indian intellectuals was that the Englishman is stronger than us because an Englishman has only one wife. Now you don't understand it because our seminaries don't necessarily teach that to our pastors. Why we have this Christian tradition of a man can have only one wife. Well, in 1872, the British were too afraid to implement what Keshav Chandra Sen was demanding. So they passed two laws. The first was an act of Christian marriage in 1872, according to which a Christian can marry only one wife and she should be at least 16 years old. And then there was a shadow act passed at the same time that Parsis, Brahma Samajis, etc., these Samajis who have rejected Hinduism, in their movements, if you are a member of Brahma Samaj, then you can have only one wife. But the British did not have the moral courage to make that the law for every Hindu. This is because it is after 1857 mutiny, or what they would call the first, some would call the first war of independence. It was neither first, there had been many wars, nor it had anything to do with independence, nor was it a national war, but that's what our friends in RSS would like to call it, the first war of national independence. When after liberating Meerut from the British, when they went to Delhi, the revolutionaries, they made the descendant of the Mughal emperor the emperor of India. So we are replacing the British Empire in Bengal with the British, with the Mughal Empire. So it was a revival of Mughal Empire that was called, is today called the First War of National Independence. Anyway, because 1857 had happened in reaction to some of the reforms where the British were bringing, and the allegation that they were using cartridges that were dipped in cow fat and pig fat, which Muslim and Hindu soldiers had to open those cartridges with their mouth. Because of those things, there was a reaction. British were arrogant, they needed to be humble, and Indians humbled them in a big way, perhaps a little bit too brutally, but that humbling was necessary. But as a result of that, the British were so afraid that in 1872 they would not make that law for all Indians, that you can have only one wife. It took, a number of people debated this in 1890s. Some reformer like Ranade said that in the annual convention of the Congress Party, where we critique British Raj and condemn British Raj and attack British Raj, we should also have some time to look at our own social evils, including the practice of a Hindu having many wives. So, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and this was in Bombay, Pune, the convention was happening. Tilak and his followers said that if Congress talks about social evils of Indian community, Hindu community, we will burn the Congress fund out. So the Congress backtracked that we will not attack social evils such as one man having many wives. So today they want to impose it on the Muslims, but back then they backed out that we will not talk about it. Only in 1946 did the British, during the Second World War, did the British muster up the courage to say that, okay, we will pass a law that Hindus can have only one wife. But by then the Congress had nothing doing. You have no business to tell us how many wives we can have. You get out of India, we will rule, we will decide how many wives we can have. So, when the Constitution was being written, Pandit Nehru asked Ambedkar to introduce a clause in the Constitution that a Hindu can have only one wife. The Constituent Assembly, Mahatma Gandhi had, I think, just died. The Constituent Assembly rejected writing this in the Indian Constitution. So Nehru said to Ambedkar, don't bother, let's go ahead, have the Constitution, and let's have a fresh election. After that, when we form the government, we will bring a law in the parliament. So they brought a law in the parliament, and Nehru was asking, Ambedkar brought a law that a Hindu can have only one wife. And the Congress party rejected that law. They brought in so many amendments that the whole bill became useless, and Nehru actually threatened the Congress party that, look, if this bill does not pass, I will resign, which means we'll have to have a fresh election and I won't give you a ticket from Congress party if you don't support this bill. So Nehru threatened the Congress party, even then the congressmen would not support the Ambedkar's bill, and Ambedkar was law minister. He was not part of the Congress, he was Republican Party, but Nehru had invited him to become the Minister of Law. So here is the Minister of Law at Nehru's request bringing this law. Nehru approves of it, he threatens the Congress party. Congress decided not to have that law, Nehru backs out. And Ambedkar got really angry at Nehru and wrote very severe critique of Nehru in the national press. So this law that a man can have only one wife, a Hindu can have only one wife, was passed only in 1955. So it took 105 years of battle, inspired by the Bible, to reform India and create what is now Hindu law, that a Hindu can have only one wife. If he wants a second wife, he needs to convert to Islam, which is what Hema Malini and Dharmendra did. Both of them became Muslims when he decided to have Hema Malini as his second wife. So, sure, if it has no sugar. Thank you. Thank you. So, has the Bible changed everything? Now, if you want the details and the references, you can go to my website, revelationmovement.com, which I haven't been maintaining for a couple of years, but this particular article, A Brief History of Hindu Marriage, is there. Why is it important that, how did our people understand that when a man has only one wife, no girlfriends, no mistresses, no adultery, no divorce, no separation, then the whole nation becomes strong? If you want to understand that, I suggest that you buy this book, or Truth and Transformation, which has very strong chapters on family, that what really the Christian family does. Christian idea of marriage does. So this is a book called The Book That Made Your World. So this idea of a family, one man having one wife, two of them having children, was part of Roman Catholicism and Orthodox Church also, but the Roman Catholic Church looked down upon marriage as something carnal. Sex is evil. Luther, 500 years ago, began to change it. That no, it is God who said it's not good for a man to be alone. A man needs the woman, Eve. God made her for him. Together they are made in God's image, etc. So what happened as a result, why Protestant nations such as Germany and England and Holland and America became stronger than Catholic nations was the change in understanding of sexuality and marriage and family. I'm sorry I won't go into the details right now, but I'm helping you to get a feel for the impact the Word of God has had in transforming our world and our nation. But nobody tells you this history. So we need Christian intellectuals who will be researching. Just take agriculture. I mentioned the bridge over, the dam over Godavari, the canal system, how Telugu areas became the rice basket of India, bread basket of India, at least as far as rice is concerned. Because an engineer who is Christian, who fights against the British government that only wants to build a bridge to be used primarily by the army, no, the energy and effort that we are spending must bless the people here. Now that was part of a larger impact of the Bible on India. Times of India, a few months ago, or maybe a year or so ago, was celebrating the founding of the Agri-Horticultural Society in Calcutta. If you go into Agri-Horticultural Society in Calcutta, in front is a marble bust of William Carey. You go in and you begin to read the minutes, early 20 years of the minutes of Agri-Horticultural Society. They are all written in William Carey's beautiful handwriting. So here is a Baptist missionary, a cobbler turned linguist who has come to India to save Indians, to establish Baptist churches in India. He is running the first Agri-Horticultural Society in the world. England didn't have an Agri-Horticultural Society when he started one in Calcutta. And the minutes are saying, how do we help Indian farmers grow tomatoes and cherries and apples and this and coffee and tea? How do we organize the competitions and vegetables, etc.? So the Times of India says that the Agri-Horticultural Society functioned as the first Ministry of Agriculture. No Hindu king, no Muslim king, no British ruler, no Sikh ruler had ever appointed a minister for agriculture. It was the Bible's vision. God is saying to Abraham, I will give you a land flowing with milk and honey. Isaiah 2, Micah 4, etc. That we do need 2-3 days to open the Bible and read those passages. It's saying that in the last days, the temple, mountain of the Lord will be lifted high above all the mountains. All the nations will flock to it, learn from Him. And because the law, the teaching, the light will go out from the mountain of the Lord, and nations will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, into instruments of agriculture and horticulture. And they will not learn war anymore, etc. The Messiah, the Prince of Peace, is going to transform nations. And I haven't talked about peace and I haven't talked about nations in detail, but I'm focusing just on this transformation of agriculture. At that time, even 50-60 years ago, most farmers in India were using wooden plow or steel plow. Just iron plow had just begun to come in. 2-3 generations ago. but certainly 200 years ago, Indians were using wooden plows and just scratching the soil and throwing the seeds. So our agriculture was horrible, terrible. The reality is that today, Gujarati farmer is learning from Israel how to grow nice tomatoes. So that's literal fulfillment of the prophecies of Isaiah and Micah and several other passages in the Old Testament. But so William Carey begins the transformation of Indian agriculture. I was in the Asiatic Society Library in Calcutta, and I read a wonderful essay on agriculture in a district where William Carey lived, which is now in Bangladesh. He described the agriculture of this particular district, how much rainfall is there, and what are the rain seasons, what are the crops that are growing now, what can grow, how can agriculture be transformed. So here is a Baptist missionary who is teaching what is now Bengal, Bangladesh, then Bengal, and at that time Bengal included Assam and Orissa and Bihar. So he's teaching them how to transform agriculture. This is what the mission, not according to the US Center of World Mission, but the mission according to Isaiah, according to Micah, according to the Bible, how they understood 200 years ago. The Christians understood. Their understanding of mission was very different than our understanding of mission today. And as a result, they're changing things. So then you have with him the dams here in Andhra and then in Punjab, part of it in Pakistan. This agricultural transformation of India came to culmination in Allahabad with Sam Higginbotham Institute. It was called Allahabad Agriculture Institute. And it was, Allahabad will change to Prayagraj now, as you know. But it was called Allahabad Agriculture Institute, which grew into what is now India's first full-fledged Christian university. There are other universities, there are deemed university. This is full university, agriculture university with 12,000 students, 1,200 staff, which is the source of the agriculture revolution in India. So William Carey, Sam Higginbotham, finally the Nobel Prize winner, a man, American, who got a Nobel Prize for agriculture. His biography is called "The Man Who Saved 1 Billion Lives," who was invited by Ashok Mehta and Mrs. Indira Gandhi to come to India to transform Indian agriculture. He spent enough time to study the situation, and he concluded that the Indian agriculture was not able and will not be able to reach its potential because of Nehru's economic policies, socialism, etc. So he said to Ashok Mehta that, look, if I've completed my study and if I tell Mrs. Gandhi what the cause is for the India's agricultural problem, I will be thrown out. But he mustered the courage and told Mrs. Gandhi that if you really want Indian agriculture to change, you have to change Nehru's, your father's agricultural policies. That's what I was doing as the convener of the Peasants' Commission of Janata Party. Some of the agricultural policies I recommended. Devi Lalji, then when he became agricultural minister in the VP Singh's government, he began to implement. And Indian agriculture is changing. But the whole transformation of Indian agriculture is a Bible-inspired movement. You don't see it that way because the missions are now misunderstood. Discipling nation now means saving souls, taking them to heaven, preparing them for rapture. But that's not how the missionaries movement that built modern India understood the Bible or the meaning of discipling nation. Let me just focus on milk. Sam Higginbotham,
when he was first teaching in what is Union Christian College across the Jamuna River in Allahabad. He studied philosophy in Princeton. He had come here to disciple scheduled castes, untouchables in Eta Manipuri area. But thank you. But the Presbyterian mission to which he belongs said, no, we want you to go to Allahabad, teach in Union Christian College, teach economics. He said, I don't know economics. They said, no, you have to teach economics. He has to teach yourself, study and teach. So he began to read all the economic textbooks from England and America to teach economics, which he didn't know. But then he found that none of the theories developed in America and England and Scotland had any relevance to Allahabad. There was no bank, there was no industry, there was no stock exchange. None of them had any relationship. So how do you teach economics? He started taking his students to every place where economic activity was happening in the city to understand what's happening, how it could be removed, etc. So when he went to Naini jail, where Nehruji spent 9.5 years, he realized that the best things economically that were happening in Allahabad districts were happening in the central jail of Naini. Because there was a military colonel who had been posted as the jailer, and he had decided that every prisoner who comes to his jail must go out as a better person. So he began to learn, get all the journals, magazines, information from Europe and America, to how to feed the sheep, cows better and goats better and chicken better, and how to keep better chicken, and how to have better chulhas, the kitchen, fire thing, how to burn minimum of wood and coal and get the maximum heat, and how to grow good wheat and vegetables, etc. So the best agricultural and economic development in the city of Allahabad was happening in the jail. So Sam Higginbotham got inspired with it and then bought the fallow land across the river and founded Agriculture Institute, moved his family there, but there was a little problem. His wife could not get pure milk in Naini across the river. So she complained, I can't live with my young kids here if I can't give them clean milk. It doesn't matter how much money I pay the milkman, he adds water to the milk and he adds the water from Yamuna River. And the dead bodies are thrown into that river. And that's the milk I have to give to my children. So Sam Higginbotham realized that if I have to live here and serve here, I've got to buy a cow for my wife. He went ahead and bought a cow. But then, if the servants are milking the cow, they will milk half and add the water, and then once the sahab is gone, then they will milk the rest of the milk. So you never get the pure milk. So Sam Higginbotham had to milk the cow himself if the children are going to have pure milk. Now fortunately, he had grown up with his father milking cows and selling milk, so he knew the art. And he began milking the cow. But within a week, so wife was very pleased that I have a good husband, he's providing clean milk to my children. But then within a week complained again that why do your children have pure milk? Why not our children? We are also Christians, we are also your neighbors. So a second cow had to be bought to provide milk to the community which was running the Agriculture Institute. Now imagine this. Sam Higginbotham went back to Princeton Theological Seminary. He gave a lecture on the cattle problem of India. Imagine a Bible seminary in India inviting somebody to give a lecture on, a philosopher to give a lecture on the cattle problem of India. The lecture was published in 1521. In 1524, as a result, enough support came to build the first scientific dairy in Allahabad, Agriculture Institute, and second in Vellore, I think it was Vellore, because Ida Scudder, who founded the Christian Medical College in Vellore, she and Sam Higginbotham were both products of Moody's revivals in Massachusetts, North America. He was European, went there because of Buddhist revival, came back as a missionary to establish churches. But now he's ended up establishing modern scientific dairy farm, 2 of them. That beginning in 1924, in 74 years or 76 years, by 1998, India became #1 producer of milk, beating America. India produces more milk today than any other country, although we have more malnutrition in India than sub-Saharan Africa. Has the Bible transformed India? You know about Amul, the dairy cooperative in Gujarat, started by Korean, a Christian, a liberal Christian, but a Christian, part of this culture. But I'm just giving an illustration to explain that some of these stories are not there in this particular volume. Maybe the milk version thing is there, but you will get the flyer. This book changed everything. This was the seed of the kingdom of God that Jesus was sowing, which will change the nations. It changed the nation. I'm only giving illustration, the idea that all human beings are equal. Many Ambedkarites think that the idea came from Dr. Ambedkar. And he became Buddhist to teach equality to India, because Hinduism was about caste system, Buddhism was a rejection of caste. Therefore, Buddhism can serve as a basis for human equality. Now that's a confusion, a darkness that Buddhist intellectuals, Christian intellectuals continue to spread in India. That's why we need an intellectual fellowship of Telugu Christians who will inform India the truth about human equality. I did this with Professor Kanchalaya many years ago here in Twin Cities in his home, when he was reading my book, The Quest for Freedom and Dignity, and he said that this is amazing. This is what I always thought Jesus is about, but no evangelist or preacher explains Jesus this way, as you are doing. And then we became very friends. In that conversation, he mentioned the phrase, he said, Professor Kanchalaya said, that Ambedkar, I feel, was wrong when he said that Constitution gives us political democracy, but this political democracy is useless without social democracy of breaking down caste, having equality at social level. This is what Ambedkar said. But Kancha said that Ambedkar was wrong. I have come to realize what we need is not social democracy, but spiritual democracy. That was his phrase, and I thought it was brilliant. And then I took more than an hour explaining to him in his brother's home, he's single, so he lives with his brother, explaining to him that what you call in spiritual democracy is what the Protestant theology called priesthood of all believers. And how that idea of priesthood of all believers grew out of the German Reformation, went to England, went to America, changed America, and came to India. So Phule, Mahatma Jyotiba Phule, dedicated his book Slavery to the people of America who had fought the Civil War to abolish the slavery in America. But in that book on slavery, Phule talks about that if we want to learn nationalism, we must look to George Washington, and we must look to the Americans, we must learn nationalism from America, because India never had a virtue called nationalism. This is the idea of nation, idea of value of nationalism came into India with the Bible, because it is the Bible that has Psalms, describing that there we sat in Babylon, our captors asking us to sing songs of Jerusalem. How can we sing songs of Jerusalem in an alien country? May my hands forget its skills. May my tongue stick to the roof and may I become incapable of singing unless I make Jerusalem my highest joy. Now this was nationalism of people living in Babylon in exile, people like Daniel, people like Nehemiah, who were willing to risk their lives, go into the lion's den for rebuilding of their nation. So this is what Phule is saying to India, that if India needs to learn nationalism, it needs to study the Bible and it needs to learn from the Americans, etc. But just focusing on the question of human equality, let's take America, although the idea begins in Germany 200-300 years before what happened in America. But during the first great awakening, the spiritual revival in America, which began with Jonathan Edwards, 1732, 33, 34, second great leader was George Whitefield. Whitefield lived much longer. Edwards died early, young. Now Whitefield was the first white man. In fact, historians call him the first American, because he was preaching in all the 13 colonies before they were one nation. So he was the first public figure who was loved, revered, respected all over. But he was the first white man who began preaching to the blacks. That upset the white Christians greatly. What do you mean? What are you doing? Do you want us to drink the Holy Communion from the same cup as our slaves? No. He was constantly traveling and he made 13 trips across the Atlantic to support John Wesley's Methodist revival. He needed money. The blacks had no money to give. Whites had the money to give. And he was upsetting all the whites with his ministry to the blacks. So he could have backed out, compromised. I need the money. I will not offend the whites. But he didn't back out. He began writing a series of articles beginning in 1740 explaining his ministry, that all men are equal because all are made in God's image, male and female. All are equal because all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. All are equal because all the sinners are loved equally by God. God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son for the whites and for the blacks. All are equal because anyone can become a child of God through repentance and faith. A woman does not have to be reborn as a man, and a Dalit doesn't have to be reborn as a Brahmin to be saved. All are equal because when we repent of our sin, receive Jesus Christ, His Holy Spirit comes into us and transforms us. We become living temples, etc. So he went on and on and on and on, explaining that the Bible teaches equality of all human beings. Whitefield died in 1770. The Revolutionary War began in 1775, 1776, 4th of July, the Declaration of Independence was written and declared that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Now Jefferson didn't write that all men, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Jefferson wrote, this is online, you can Google the original draft of the document, we hold these truths to be sacred, meaning derived from sacred scriptures, that all men are created equal. Under pressure from Benjamin Franklin, who was being influenced by Thomas Paine, etc., they changed the language that we hold these truths to be sacred, we hold these truths to be self-evident, derived from common sense, derived from scriptures. The language was changed. But everybody understood that only Americans saw all people, American revolutionaries saw all people equal because their minds were shaped by the Bible exposition of George Whitefield. Whitefield's popularizer, one of his popularizers was Benjamin Franklin, who changed the language. Now, this is what is impacting India, that all human beings are equal. Why is this important? Suppose there is a poor farmer. He has a small well he plants 100 mango trees. He says 15% of these are high quality mango trees. I will put all my energy and effort into these 15 trees, water them, etc., provide all the manure, security. 85% are second class, third class, I don't need to bother with them. Well, he's condemning himself to poverty. If he wants to be a prosperous farmer, he has to invest his energy, time, effort in the 85%, so that every tree yields the best fruit. Now this is the transformation which, of course, you have already produced. Brother Stephen David has produced this book, Christ Cast in the Church, which is on sale outside. So this is one of the Telugu intellectual product, which is explaining what needs to happen. That the Bible is the force that brought this very important truth, which is not a scientific truth. No one has conducted a scientific, sociological, empirical study to prove that men and women are equal. It is self-evident that human beings are all unequal. Why are we unequal? Hinduism said because God himself created us unequal, some from his mouth, some from his shoulders, some from his belly, and some from his feet. God created us unequal. Buddha rejected it because he rejected that a God exists who created. But all those who are created from his mouth, the Brahmins, they are also unequal. Some are male, some are female, some are rich, others are poor, some are strong, some are weak. Why are they unequal? So Hinduism said they are unequal because of their poor karma in previous life. You are born a woman because your karma were bad. If you serve me well in this life, next life you can be reborn as a male. Now, Buddha accepted the second explanation of inequality. Karma and reincarnation is a philosophical explanation of inequality. That's why Buddhism cannot provide the basis for faith in human equality. So what deceived Ambedkar? It was Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore wrote a poem called the dance drama. Not Gitanjali, that's his collection of poems. The dance drama, the lowest caste women. Chandalika. So, thank you. My brain is not functioning too well. So, Rabindranath Tagore wrote a dance drama called Chandalika. Chandals are the lowest caste. Chandalika is the lowest of the low, a girl. She goes to the well in the middle of the day when high caste women will not be there to get the water. She runs into a Buddhist monk who asks her to give water to him. She is horrified. I am a Chandalika. How can you ask me for water? How can you drink water that I have touched? He says, gives her a lecture on that no, you're not a Chandalika, you're a human being, all human beings are equal. No, so she gives him water and he goes away. And her mother is puzzled, what's taking this girl so long? Is she being beaten up? So she goes to the well and asks, why are you so late? So she explains that this monk asked me for water. And I told, so the mother is horrified. Did you tell him that you are a Chandalika? So the daughter says, no, I'm not a Chandalika, I'm a human being. So there's this argument that goes on between mother and daughters. Most of the dance drama is the dialogue between mother and the daughter. Then later she falls in love with the monk. He's not supposed to have sex or marry, but they cast spells on him and he changes. So he goes into a Freudian understanding of sexuality in that dance drama. But the first part is what is of interest to me. So why didn't Rabindranath Tagore say that the priest, the monk, was a Shankaranand or Samanand, a Hindu? If he said that this was a Brahmin Hindu monk who asked the woman for a water and then taught her human equality, nobody in India will believe Tagore. Buddhism was dead. Buddhism didn't exist. So Tagore puts John 4, the incident of Jesus, he plagiarizes, he takes John 4, what Jesus is talking to the Samaritan woman, puts it in this Buddhist monk's mouth, and Buddhism then teaches equality. That is what gives to Ambedkar the thought, maybe we can use Buddhism to teach human equality in India. But this is an idea which comes with the Bible. Carey made it a practice that if any Hindu becomes a Christian, is baptized, he has to sit with all castes and eat together. That became a force. The gospel is the force that began to transform India. Why is this important? This is important so that energies of everyone are released to do their best for the nation. If only 15% are being taken care of, you can't build a great India. It's when every individual is recognized as made in God's image, precious, a sinner, yes, but loved by God, so that God sent His Son to die for everyone. Why? So that He might make them children of God, priests and kings. That's the message that came with the gospel. It has been crowded. And Christianity, Christian leadership has become a means of making money, building your empire. It is not a means which is being used to disciple nations. Yes, I'm saving souls, I'm establishing churches, I need more money. But is the gospel really transforming this nation? So why do we want a revival of the Christian mind? Because India has, and I will talk about corruption in the third session, India has no other force. The world has no other truth that can transform the nation. This, the Word of God, is the force, which is the double-edged sword, which has been given to us as our sword, the weapon against the kingdom of darkness. And we need people who are not interested just in a seminary degree and a profession, but people who would begin to study India, study the Bible, study the world, so that we can unpack the light of the Word of God. The opening of His Word gives light. And it is the light that will transform our nation. Thank you very much.